Hello and welcome back to another video where we have Kate sharing some of her reflections, and I think today she's going to kind of go back to the beginning of where her journey with this all started. So I don't want to say too much, but the last video that we did with Kate, we got to just sit there and listen for 30 odd minutes and kind of hear someone's insights and everyday experience of what it's meant to learn about the principles. And we came away just sort of beaming, and then we've had such beautiful feedback from that video. We've asked Kate if she would mind doing another one. So without any more of me rambling, Kate.
Okay, hi. So what I'm going to start with was a conversation I was having with a friend. It was actually, I went for a walk with a couple of friends last week, and one of them is training to be a counsellor, and she's very kind and she'll do a lot of good. And she was telling me what she's been learning, and she was talking about that she sees that we are the blueprint of our experience and we look at feelings. And I was sort of saying, but our feelings are like our thoughts playing out. Our feelings are like our thoughts in action. And you can't really have a feeling without having a thought. And she said, you know, Kate, I fundamentally disagree with you. And that was that, really. There was a sort of that separation slightly, because we were we'd then gone into our egos a bit. And I went home and I was thinking about it. And I started to feel a bit flat and a bit negative. And I looked at what I was thinking, because this is now how it sort of works for me. And what I was thinking was, this is really hard to share. And then I was thinking, I don't know if I can share this. I don't know if I can. I'm asking people to sort of turn away from everything that they have learned, everything that they know, and I'm asking them to sort of step into the unknown and put their toe into you know, something, just look in a different direction. And I started to think, and this is how the thought works for me now. It's like I've said before, it's like a bubble. And when I focus on it, it just grows. So there's this bubble, and and I see, you know, and as soon as I recognize the thought, it's like it pops, or it just moves and just floats away, or however you want to look at it. Because what I was thinking was, I can't do this. And then as soon as I recognize the thoughts, there's this space, because the bubble has moved, and then there's this space. And what came to me was, well, that's a thought. And what came to me was, I don't need to know how I'm going to share this. You know, I don't need to work this out. You know, I remember hearing something about Sydney Banks talking about the little mind and the big mind. And I was thinking, I'm just going to leave that to the big mind. I'm not going to try and work this out. And then I had this feeling of, oh, relief. I don't have to work that out. I don't have to think about it. And then Georgia came home from school, and I told her about this conversation, and she said, Mummy, you can't have a feeling without a thought. She said, you know that? And I said, yeah. And it was like I shifted my mental spotlight from, I can't share this, and those feelings of sort of negativity and being a bit flat. And then it moved across to, I don't need to work that out. And then I felt quite calm, and there was relief that I don't need to work this out. And then it moved over here, which was, I already am sharing this. I'm just sharing this from just being me, you know. And Dave said before, he's always, you know, he says, when I said, oh, I'm a bit nervous about sharing, he says, just be you. And I see what he means. He's just being me. I am sharing this, and that's enough. And so that's why I just wanted to just go back to the beginning of this journey, when I didn't see this. because I was just like my friend. I didn't see that, I looked at feelings and I looked at life happening to me and to us. And so, and that was okay, because, that's just how I lived. And it was only when Georgia started to get really anxious that it wasn't okay. Because, I've now got a situation where my child she's gone from being pretty happy at school, and she's, she loves her sport, and she's captain of hockey, and she goes on the stage and she recites poetry, and she's happy, she's got friends, and then nothing really changes, but she's crippled with this anxiety. And, it gets to the point where she can't go to school anymore. So then I start to look at what's happening. And so, and this is just a metaphor, okay? Because this is the only way I can try and share this. And what's really helpful for you is if you listen in a way that is not trying to work it out. It's not trying to see whether I'm right or wrong, or judge what I'm saying. Just listen just listen. Not trying to hear anything, just listening. And so Georgia, she gets anxious. Now, in fact, I always use bikes. Now I've got lining paper, anything that is to hand in my house. And so this is how I see it. Okay, this is Georgia's reality. Okay, so we can look back. This is I do a lot of decorating. We can look back in here, and we can see there's there's no colours there, but we can see in her reality, goes right back to when she's born, and there's just she's got this gift, which is she's got all these colours that she can create her reality with. This is the gift of thought. And then, so this is Georgia's reality, and this is my reality. Now, I didn't even realise that we lived in separate realities, so I didn't know anything about this. So, for whatever reason, doesn't really matter, Georgia, and in each of these realities, we can be in the same situation, and Georgia and she might find something really fun and choose maybe, she'd be drawing with this red pen, and I'm actually sitting there really bored, and I might be, choosing a completely different colour, even though we're in the same situation. So this is all coming from our thinking, and we create our realities. So for whatever reason, I'm going to choose, orange, because this is an anxious thought. And for whatever reason, Georgia starts to focus on this one. And she starts to draw with it a bit more. Doesn't matter why. She just does. She gives it a lot of meaning. And so if I look in her reality, if I look in her great big long stretch of lining paper, I can see that there's a point where there's more orange. And so at that point, I start to think, well, okay, so that's, when she's at school, there's more orange. So it's coming from school. And when she's in a maths lesson, wow, there's loads of orange there. So that teacher's quite shouty. So it's coming from that teacher. And then I look in my reality, and I can see that when I'm with Georgia, I'm also picking up this orange pen. There's a lot more orange pen when I'm with Georgia. But what neither of us realize is that we are holding the pen. We're just looking, we're looking in here. So then we try and find help, and we're looking for help in here, because this is all we know that exists. I don't know anything other than my reality, because that's where I lived. I wasn't interested in anything else. I just wasn't interested in even knowing about spiritual side of life or looking beyond the known. I just lived in here. That was it for me. This gift of consciousness, asleep. I was just completely asleep. And so we looked for help, and all the help that we found, and this is just my experience, other people, might have different experience, but for me, the help that we found in the known, in the reality, was very much looking at what we'd drawn, looking at all the orange pen, and going back and looking for where did it start? And, you know, Georgia and I are standing there with these orange pens going, no idea where that's coming from. And everyone is, and then we had, you know, and people are looking at the brain and rewiring the brain as if thoughts are real. And then there was, you know, marking your anxiety from 0 to 10. Well, that caused a lot of anxiety for Georgia. You know, is it a 7? Is it an 8? What if it's a 9? What if I get that wrong? And then we'd come out and she'd be completely anxious, and she didn't engage with the help that was so well intentioned. But for Georgia, it just wasn't touching the sides. It just didn't. She just carried on with this orange pen. You know, it reminds me of when one of my children was small. I can't remember which one it was. And I came downstairs and they're standing there in their nappy, and there's all this crayon all over the wall. And I'm like, excuse me, what's going on here? And they're standing there and they're like, I don't know, mummy. And they're standing there, they've got this big fat crayon in their hand, and they're so focused. I mean, I can't believe they've learned to lie at that point, or they haven't done it very well, but they're so focused on something else that they've just completely forgotten, and they have no idea that they've got this pen in their hand, this crayon in their hand. But anyway, so then this friend of mine, who, in fact, she wasn't even a friend, she was a parent at school. She came over to me in the playground, and this is how the universal mind works. This is what I think is so cool about the principles. She came up to me, and she hardly knew me, and she just said to me, she said, have you come across the principles? And I said, no, but I am open for anything, because, you know, this has been going on for 3 years, and I'm lost, and I need help, and I'm not finding any help. And so we had a few sessions with the lovely Flavia, and we went to see her. And Georgia, for the first time, you know, something made sense, and she enjoyed it. She wanted to listen. And when we were with Flavia, there was a lovely feeling. It made sense. And so then I started to listen. I started listening to the principles, and I started to understand, okay, so there's something more than this. There's something behind. So I'm holding the pen. I'm creating this. So I'm the thinker. And I can choose my thoughts. Well, I can choose which thoughts I focus on. And that's creating my reality. So then I thought, wow, well, okay, now everything's going to be fine, because now I can see what's going on. But what I didn't realize is I'm still holding the pen. I'm still, if you listen to my other talk, I'm not on the bike. The bike is firmly on the stand, but I sort of think I'm on it. And so then I'm with George, and I'm going, come on, George. Every time she gets upset, and I'm like, well, this is coming from your thinking, so you don't have to do it anymore. But it doesn't, you know, at this point, Georgia she's put this down, and she's picked up this great big paintbrush, and she's dipping it in the orange paint, and she's like swiping it all over her. You know, we're really in the orange now. She's not going to school at all. I often can't find her. She's hiding under the bed. There's, you know, no one's getting any sleep. She's not sleeping in her room. She's sleeping in my room. And my little sister said to me, she said, Kate, you're going to have a breakdown. Something is going to give. You need to get some help. And I'm trying to get help. And then I just thought, you know what? She was talking about help in the known. And I just went, I know. This is the universal mind. I knew that this made sense. I knew that the answer was in this direction, because I had just swung around and was looking somewhere else. And so I rang Dave. And I remember standing in Tesco's and just crying and saying, and Dave just said, just come. She said, just come for the weekend, for 4 days, and bring Georgia, and just come and see us. And then life changed. You know, that's you know, life just changed. Life before and life after. And what was really important was day 2, because on day 2 we were in this lovely feeling, and we walked, and Dave and Jen, you know, they talked about nature and resilience, and they showed us they've just got an amazing way of sharing this. And they shared their own experiences, and we just listened, and we were in this amazing feeling for 2 days. And it was because there was this hope. That was what it was, you know, there was just this hope. Everything was going to be okay. And then at the end of day 2, Georgia said, she said, Mommy, I love it here. I love being with Dave and Jen and Rusty and Dave's family. And I want to come and live in Kendal. And she said, but do you know what? She said, I still can't go back to school. She said, you know that, don't you? She said, when we go home, I still can't go back to school. Now at this point, because I wasn't on the bike, and I was still holding a pen, I just believed her. You know, I thought that every thought was real. I hadn't understood the nature of thought. I'd intellectually understood it, but I hadn't felt it. I just hadn't felt it inside. So at that point, when she told me, I can't do that, I just believed her. And it was like we were at the top of this roller coaster ride, having this great time. And then we were strapped in together and we just plummeted. We had such a horrible evening. Having had this lovely connection and we were having such a lovely time, we just then, all from that one thought, you know, if I had reacted differently to that one thought, it would have been different. But I believed that one thought. And that one thought was, I can't do this. And I thought, well, that's real then. So I believed her. And then we went from hope to despair. It's one thought. That's how it works. That's the power of thoughts. So we then, in the morning, we are now in a completely different place, and we go back to Dave and Jen, and Georgia at this point, she's crying, she won't get out of the car. She's holding me, don't get out of the car. And I said, and we were in a horrible place. And I went in and I sat, and I sat on the sofa with Jen, and I was like this. And I went, I said, oh my God. I said, you don't realize this isn't working. I said, because this thought starts like a little bubble. And when you focus on it, it just gets huge. And then what had happened was that George and I were, both of us, we were off in the future, as if we knew what happened in the future. And I've got another prop for you here. This is the future. Ta-da! This is, Georgia does a lot of art. This is the future. It's just an empty canvas. You know, and what happens is, we thought, what we thought was happening, this is just coming to me now, is that we thought when we were predicting the future, we could use our pens and we could draw on here, but our pens don't work on here. They don't work on here. So every time that we think that we know what's going on in the future, all that's happening is that we're picking up the pen and we are in our reality, we're drawing away in our reality. So the anxious pen has come back out and we're scribbling around so if you looked at the reality, you can see it all going on, but nothing's happening here because we can't control this. You know, we can plan it, we can think about the future, but if we live it, if we say, I know what's going to happen when we go back to school, Georgia's not going to go in, I've got 3 children, how am I going to, and then it just creates all this feeling. And so then let me just see if I can do this. Wait there. So I'm in this, in my head, I'm thinking, well, Georgia's sitting in the car and she won't be talking to Dave. He won't get a word out of her. And this is a complete waste of time. And then I look and I'm like this, and I'm just like this. I look out the window. Can you see this? Where's the camera? Hang on a minute. Can you actually see that? So I look out the window and there's Georgia. So she's not sitting in the car crying. It was like Dave had she's got a harness on and she's
legal
fine.
Disclaimer, not insured for that. It was just a good idea at the time.
It was like, you know, it was like Dave was like, she's bloody well going to see this, even if I have to send her child up a tree. And I think at that moment, you know, something shifted within. You know, it was like, I think it's like a valve just sort of opened, and all this sort of feeling, light, something shifted, because I was like, nothing has changed, and where is the anxiety? And I'd understood before that it comes from your thinking, but I just felt it. It was like, oh. And that point, I started to listen differently. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't trying to fix Georgia. I wasn't trying to, I just listened differently. My mind, you know, my mind opened. I don't know what happened, but I listened in a way that I hadn't been listening before, because I started to feel different. And then in the morning, I think I might have said this in the other talk, that I had this big realization. And I think it was big for me because I'd been so asleep. I didn't know there was anything outside this reality. And I was sitting in this cafe, and I mean, it must have looked funny because it happened to be Valentine's Day, and I happened to be sitting in the corner of the cafe, and I had like these tears running down my face. So how it would have looked to other people, oh, that sad woman over there crying into her coffee on her own on Valentine's Day. But for me, it was like tears of relief, because I'd woken up, you know, for the first time, age 48. Oh. So anyway, at that point, more and more stuff started coming to me. And then at that point, Georgia didn't have the same big realization that I'd had. You know, I just then reflected and started seeing more and more and more. It was like the valve was open. It was all just coming in. And she, I'm quite glad she didn't have the same realization that I had, because it meant that I then had to keep finding ways to show her. And for her, it's like when we got back, it was like suddenly she had nowhere to stand, because all these things that we believed that she was, you know, that you've got low self-esteem, and you're anxious, and you're
sensitive child.
You're highly sensitive. I bought into that one big time. And all these things that we believed about her, well, you know, it's all an illusion. It was all, you know, this was all made up. And so she kept trying to show me that she wasn't okay. And I kept, well, you are. You really are okay. And so one time, and I told you about this before with the spider, but this was important, the spider, because she's like my leveler of how real our realities look. So she came up and she said, Mummy, there's this spider. Will you come and sort the spider? And she's getting agitated about the spider. And I said, and I went up, and this is slightly cheating because I'm not actually scared of spiders, but I went up and I said, Georgia, I said, I'm looking at the same spider, and you know, I see just a spider, and it's if we're looking at the same spider and you're feeling scared and I'm not feeling scared, it's got to come from your thinking. It can't come from the spider. And Georgia went, I know it's coming from my thinking, but I'm still feeling it. You're not being helpful, Mummy. Just move the spider. I was like, oh God. And then I went, oh, she's so not getting this. She's just not getting it. Then I can just wake up. She's not getting it. She is it. What do you mean she's not getting it? So I went back to her and I said, are you hearing from me that you're failing at the 3 principles? You're failing at life. And she said, yeah, you know, if I understood this, if I could get this, then I'd be able to change my thought about the spider. You know, I'm not getting this. And I said, you can't change your thoughts. You know, you can't change a bubble. You can't change a cloud in the sky. You can recognize it. And I said, and you recognized it. You recognize this is coming from your thinking. And that's enough. That's huge. What you can do with that is everything. You know, that's what changes your life. So I said, you know, and then I thought about it. I said, so I thought about something I really don't like, which is maggots. And I said, if I'm cleaning out the bin in the summer and there happens to be maggots in the bin, I've got two choices. Well, I've probably got more, but I've got at least two choices at the moment that I can see. And one of them is that I can focus on that thought. The thought is, I don't like maggots. And then I can focus on that, and then I can really look at that bubble. And I can look at it, and I can look at it, and it grows, and it grows into, maggots mean death. And maggots, you know, they were in that film that I watched, and there was that animal that was crawling with maggots and all the flies, and then that creates all these feelings. You know, the feelings are our thoughts being played out. So then I'm cleaning out the bin, and oh my God, and feeling it, and I'm retching, and it's not a nice experience. But once you see it's coming from your thinking, then you've got another path. And the other path is, okay, you recognize the thought and you leave it alone. It's a lot of this is actually so much, it's just common sense, but we don't see it. And so you don't have to engage with that thought. Then you just clean the bin, neutral. And once you start to see that, and you've just got to be willing to let go and just try it. And then you see, and it brings you freedom. And you go from, someone mentioned this before, it's like you go from being, you know, in the back of the plane when you're just looking at feelings, and then there's turbulence and you go, oh, where did that come from? And then you go to the front because you're the pilot. You can see, there's choices, and there's just so much more freedom, and life is just easier. It's just easier. So Georgia, she, and then we get closer to going back to school, and there's a few times in the holidays. So we're in lockdown now, and we have lockdown, and then we have the summer holidays. And there's a few times in the holidays where she goes into here, and she starts to tell me about, I can't go to school, and this is what's going to happen. And I just sort of say, Georgia, you know, you're in the future. And that's fine, you can be there, but then you're going to feel it, and it's going to be bumpy, and it's you can do that, but you know, you're fine, and you can also leave it alone. And she and then we get to like 3 days before she's going back to school, and I think I might have talked about this on the other talk, which I should have watched, and then I'd know what I'd said. But we get too close to going back to school, and she has 2 nights where she literally picks up this orange pen and she starts drawing, and all these anxious thoughts. And she said, and she's in the future, and she's saying, I can't get, and she has 2 nights where she's literally awake the whole night, and she's crying, and she's just feeling terrified. She hasn't been at school for months, and the thought of going back to school is just killing her. And then all I can do at that point is I can just be with her, and I can say, look, this will pass. You're in your thinking. It's all it is. It's fine. You know, it's not going to hurt you. Anxiety it's not going to hurt you. It's a feeling. It's coming from your thinking. And then on the third night, she just, all she did was she changed her mind. That's all it was. Because as she was picking this up, and she was starting to, I just said, hang on a minute, Georgia, you know where that path takes you. Yeah, you've been there. You've absolutely been there 2 nights in a row. And I said, you could just change your mind. Don't have to engage with that thinking. You don't have to engage with, you know, you could just put the pen down. And it's like there was this connection just for a moment, and she just said, Mum, will you just read to me? And it's, you know, it just sounds so ordinary. Will you just read to me? But that was her recognizing that if I'm reading to her, then she's not focusing on this. She's going to be listening to me. And that means she knows that it's coming from her thinking. And it was knowing. It was different. And it was, I think that's the first time that she put this down. She put it down. And then, you know, a few minutes later, she was laughing about something. I was reading her something funny. And then we picked up, I had this by the bed. I hadn't been reading it for ages. This is a funny thing, because I tried to read this before seeing you guys, and I didn't understand a word of it. it was like reading Russian. And I really didn't like it because I didn't understand it. And I was trying to understand it. And then I read it again. I could read this again and again now, because I just read it differently, and it just makes perfect sense. And yet before, it was like it was written in Russian. It's bizarre. And anyway, so I said, pick a page, any page. We sometimes do this, and she picked a page, and it opened up on this page. Can you read that? Living in the now. And then we laughed at that, because we were like, see, Sydney's telling you, get out of the future. And so that was when she shifted, and then we reflected on the next day, and then she went to school. And you know, it's not been years of therapy. It's just Georgia changed her mind, and she hasn't, she for a few days she felt the anxiety, but she didn't engage with it. It's fine to feel anxiety, but she just had given it so much meaning. It was like, go back to my pens. It was like she has all of these, and then she focused on this one, and she forgot about all of these. She just forgot about them. And now she's using all of them again. And it's like, and this is what I remember Dave on the first day, I'm not gonna draw one now, but the first day you drew a rainbow. And that's what this is. It's like, she can be this, and she can be this, and she can focus on this and this and this. But at the end of the day, she isn't these, she's the rainbow. She's the rainbow, and she is unbreakable. And I think that's all I'm going to say.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
I remember that when Georgia wouldn't get out of the car, and I remember you telling us about how your sensitive child. I've got this very sensitive child, and I just looked at you and said, "Well, she's not being very sensitive right now. It seems to me like she's being very stubborn." And you were like, "Nobody's ever spoken to me like that." And that was when we went and when we got my climbing kit out and got Georgia up the tree, and it was brilliant because she was 50 foot up a tree in the end, stood on this branch, dangling off a bit of string. And I remember saying to it, "How do you feel?" She went, "Good." "Any anxiety?" "No." So you are in a potentially life-threatening situation and you have no anxiety? "No, none." "But school?" "Yeah, no, school's terrifying." It was just such a beautiful moment. And it was, I loved spending that 4 days with you two. We're really, really thankful for it.
And Georgia just breathes and lives climbing. She loves to climb.
She's a climber. She loves climbing.
You could see as soon as she's engaged in something she loves, all the other stuff falls off. She comes out of the future and back to the moment, and then you start to see nothing's changed. Everything feels different.
That's right. And
it's so cool to watch you guys together, learning that.
It's beautiful to see the genius. We speak to lots of kids and stuff, and like the amount of kids that do hate school, and they're struggling their way through this schooling system. And a lot of kids come away. I was one of these people who came away from school feeling like I was unintelligent because I didn't fit into that model of learning, and I hated it. I used to get very anxious at school, and it was only when I woke up at 33 did I actually realize that intelligence cannot be measured. You cannot measure intelligence. You cannot give it you can give it an A, but it's not an A. It's not a number 9. It's not a 1 or anything like that. You cannot measure intelligence. Intelligence is the foundation of life itself. And I remember, like, we were speaking to our nephew, Archie, who's just one of the most beautiful kids, and he doesn't think he's very clever. And we're like, "All right, who's best in this car at Pokemon?" Like, "Me." "Well, yeah, you are. But what you're interested in, you are an utter genius." and everybody is an utter genius in what they're interested in. It just so happens that nature creates people that are all different, and we're all interested in different things, which is a beautiful thing because it brings the variety and the spontaneity into life, and it means that human beings can adapt to all different kinds of situations, because there are people who think differently and they're all intelligent and genius in all different subjects. And Georgia is a girl who is so capable, so physically capable, and she's utterly amazing at climbing. You've sent us videos and stuff like that. And so to get her out climbing was just like, right, let's get her out climbing. Let's get her out of this space within her mind at this present moment, because it's going nowhere. It's not serving anybody. Let's get her out climbing. And it was from that moment, Georgia then, once she came out of the tree, she came into the house and sat down, and we had the fire lit, and it was lovely. But I remember that one of the things that struck me most about this was you came bringing Georgia, and it was you who left changed. You left bringing Georgia at that point wasn't in any space to listen. You know, she just wasn't in, for whatever reason, she wasn't in the space to listen, but you were in the space to hear. What we've loved since keeping in touch with you, Kate, is how you have navigated this situation. Like, you are, to us, you are such an inspirational mother. And you've phoned us up from time to time going, oh, it's difficult, and you've got through it. And time again, you've proven to yourself what you've learned, and it's really established itself within you. And I love now that Georgia goes to school, and you've sent us, messages about how she didn't want to go to maths, but all of a sudden she's recognized what's going on, and she, in spite of all her feelings, she's gone in ahead and just gone and sat down and got on with the maths, and then walked out and realizing that it was absolutely fine.
It's like the time you told us that she'd had a nosebleed in class, which before you thought that would have been the worst thing, and she was laughing about it. Yeah. And it was like, wow. Yeah. Like,
because she came home and she said, so nothing faces her now. I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's like, there's not been years of, it's literally, she changed her mind. Yeah. And now all these things that before, you know, like I arrived really late the other day. I was busy reflecting in the car, and I went the wrong way. We've gone the wrong way. I do a lot of that. I need to get back into my reality a bit more, because I spend a lot of time reflecting now. And so we were really late, and everyone had gone in, and George was like, you know, come on, get a grip. But completely, there isn't, the anxiety's just gone. I mean, it's bizarre. And then the other day, she went, oh, Mum, you know, I was in my chemistry lesson, and I realized I'd taken my wash bag to school instead of my pencil case. Now, before, that would have been like, no, it's funny. You know, she's just using all of the, she's just living again. And she's just, it just depends where you look. Do you know, I heard a funny thing this morning, just really quickly, have you heard about figs? Do you know about figs?
Which part?
So, do you know anything about figs?
I know that they're an inside-out flower, effectively.
Okay. So don't say. I'm going to. So I was listening to that, and it caught my interest, because I was like, oh, a fig flowers from the inside. I thought, well, that's appropriate. That's relevant right now, coming from within, coming from the inside. And then they were talking about the fact that a fig has a little hole in it, because it flowers from the inside. It has a little hole, which only a specific one type of wasp can fit through this hole. So it fits into the fig, and in squeezing in, it does lose its wings and its antennae, but it pollinates the fig, and then it sort of, I think the enzymes of the fig sort of, the wasp sort of dissolves. And I was listening to it, and I was thinking, oh my God, that is incredible. And I was thinking that it reminded me of what I'd been thinking before about, you know, talking to my friend and trying to work out, how can I share this? And then going, oh, just leave that to the universe. You know, it's too big for us to understand how this stuff happens. You know, and I was thinking about this fig, and I was going, wow, that's just, you know, amazing. And then And I just happened to be really in the moment. And then the DJ person, whoever it is, the news person who's reading it, he said he was more in his ego at that moment and less in sort of in the moment. And he was sort of saying, "Oh, I don't think," and he was so and he was saying, "I don't think I'm going to eat a fig again. You know, it might have a wasp in it." And I was like, "This is how this works. You know, we've got complete free will, so we can either." I had chosen the thought of, wow, that is incredible. And it was making, and all these feelings of amazement were coming out. And he was going, ooh, that's gross. Every time there's a fig, there's a wasp in it. And so he was having feelings of sort of, ooh, I'm not going to eat a fig again. And we're both listening to the same thing. And that's, and I just thought, this is how this works. Yeah. You know, sometimes we're wrapped up in our ego. And sometimes we're sort of more in the moment. And there isn't any sort of right and wrong. It's just how life plays out. And I didn't see any of this before. I didn't see, I mean, God, I was so asleep before I came to see you guys.
It's when, for me, it's when I look at things like that, the amount I've learned more through about myself and life through observing the natural world. And like when you look at that, it's like when you look at the genius of that setup between the fig and the wasp, the absolute perfection in it, you can see that nature doesn't make mistakes. You know, it is so perfect. A mistake or an imperfection is only ever going to be a perspective of somebody's mind. Oh, it's terrible that a wasp goes inside a fig. I'm never going to eat one of them things again. And to you, it was like, no, that's phenomenal. And, you know, it's quite interesting. The more we look at nature, we don't come away from it going, oh, nature's stupid. You know, we come away from nature. Anything that science observes within nature, it comes away with even more questions and even more in awe of it. Nature is the most beautiful, perfect, whole thing. And one of the things that I really like to point out to people is that we are that. We are that nature. You know, we are built with the same perfection, the same time and effort put into it as the fig and the wasp. And I think it's a deeply humbling thing. And it really helps to, when we start to people talk about as if we reconnect with nature. You can't reconnect with nature. You were never disconnected from it in the first place. The only thing that has happened is you've become aware of it.
Yeah, I'm really aware of nature now. You know, Charlie will sometimes say, "What are you doing, Mummy? You're stopping and looking at the trees all the time." You know, I never used to be aware. I just, like I say, I was asleep.
Yeah. When we went to Nepal, there was can you remember exactly what it said on the World Peace Pagoda? It was saying by Buddha, if you can see the beauty in a single flower, what was it? If it's something like, if you can stop for a moment and see the beauty in a single flower, then you will truly know life, or something like, it was something along those lines. And it's that, you know, many of us are alive, but just going through the motions of existence. And then there are those of us who are lucky enough just for a moment to grab a glimpse of something beyond our preconceived ideas, our beliefs, our ideologies, and for a moment it drops away and we are left in awe. And I think when people start to find that awe, they start to find that they are capable of anything. And people like Georgia come along, which look, for all intents and purposes, like an impossible case. So fixed in their beliefs. And this is the beautiful thing. We've come across so many people like that, you know, in so many different circumstances, in many different parts of the world. And we've seen in a moment it drop. And as it's dropped, new possibilities emerge, new realities come into being. And it's such a privilege, and it's such a privilege to be able to hear your story, Kate. And
well, you know, I'm always grateful to you guys. I mean, with that day when I came to that second day or third morning, whatever it was, and I came in, I was talking to Jen, and I was just going, oh my God, Jen. And Jen was just, you know, making a cup of tea, completely relaxed, you know, because she knew exactly what I was doing. You know, she had no need to engage with the bubble that I was focusing on, you know, and I was off in the future. And she just completely, she knows, you know. And so then when you're around that, and I think, and this is what Susan actually said to me, she said, you know, with Georgia, she's now around someone who knows, who knows that she's okay. And, you know, because before when she thought she wasn't okay, I thought she wasn't okay. And we're always often, you know, we're surrounded by people who don't think we're okay. When we say we're not okay, they go, oh my God, you're not okay. And actually, we are okay.
Is it after we listened to, when we did the last recording with you, I came away and I was speaking to my dad, and I just said, listening to you again, it was almost like this, I might have said it at the end of the call, I can't remember, but this feeling of just the simplicity of the message I initially heard was that we're all right. We just forget sometimes. And the thing I think that really helped me was that I was around someone who just knew I was all right, regardless of all the things I thought were wrong with me. And I don't know, it simplified the message for me again. Because I think, like you say, we can get caught up in how to share, whether it's easy to share or is something going to be there for us to say. But there is something deeper, that intelligence that knows how to create a wasp that fits inside the fig. Like that same intelligence lives us. Like we don't have to figure that bit out. And it's the same with sharing.
You can't figure that bit out.
No.
The moment you try and figure it out, it's a thought. You've taken the infinite potential of infinity and condensed it down into a single. It will never be infinity. I think it's such a beautiful thing, because there's people who are trying to figure out the principles. Trying to figure it out? You can't. You cannot know it. If you think you understand it, you are deluding yourself. You're an ego. This whole thing is a divine mystery, and it will always remain a divine mystery. But what we can start to wake up to is, you start to wake up to the nature of this divine mystery. It will always be a divine mystery, but once you start to wake up, and I love how you spoke about how you'd heard it, you knew it. I know this, but all of a sudden you felt it, or you experienced it as a reality. You've experienced it as a truth. That's a big difference. There's a difference. I think Sydney Banks would talk about how, and he would say how mystics would talk about hearing, and then hearing.
Yeah.
You know, there's hearing with the intellect, and then there's waking up to the fact. And the difference is night and day. And it's not something that you can manufacture. It's not something to beat ourselves up over. It just happens when it's ready.
Yeah, when you're not looking.
When you're not looking.
I wasn't looking for it.
Yeah, exactly. And
for me,
people who come with their preconceived ideas of what they think they're looking for, we ask them, please drop it, because it's not that. You're not looking for what you think you're looking for, because what you are truly looking for, you cannot know with your intellect. Sorry.
I can't remember now.
Well, thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
That was beautiful.
Well, thank you. And and another time, I'm not going to share it now because I'm done now. But another thing that happened this weekend, it just shows as well how it makes life easier.
Yeah.
It was sort of playing out, but I'll tell you that another time.
Let's do another one
next week.
That is Kate's Reflections.
It'll be a shorter one. That was quite a long one.
Oh, it was lovely. Thank you so much, love.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.